Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen. This is Desiree Rover from the Netherlands. I'm a medical research journalist searching for truth and finding it in all sorts of places. And tonight I have a very special guest with the hat, and that is Nick Kollerstrom. And he is a searcher for truth and reality as well. And he has found truth in strange places also. And he has paid a high price for speaking it out about that. And yeah, I know a little bit of that flack myself as well. But they took you down harder, Nicholas Kollerstrom. Welcome.
Yes. Hi there, Desiree. That was a good few years ago now, about 8 years. I was chucked out of my college. I was in a history of science department, and I started looking where people warned me not to look, about evidence for chemical residues of cyanide in the walls of the German labour camps, and what this showed about exactly where the cyanide was used. And that got me into a lot of trouble. You know, I thought it was fairly straightforward chemistry, but people really didn't like it. And so my academic career came to an end then. It was like forbidden territory, you know.
Yeah, the chemistry was very straightforward, but the story behind it, you called it in your book that you have written about that situation, you called it breaking the spell.
It was strange, Desiree, yes. As you say, rightly said, the chemistry was very straightforward. And massive amounts of cyanide was there in one place, and they weren't there where it was supposed to be. And this had far-reaching implications. And I eventually felt that it was a bit more like some religion rather than a scientific issue, as if I was a heretic against some modern religion. That's why I called my book Breaking the Spell. And I still do feel that, actually. People are in the kind of enchantment whereby they somehow need to believe these stories. And I don't really think we can be happy properly, Desiree, like we're supposed to be happy, if we have belief in these nightmare hallucination, so horror stories that didn't really happen, you know. I mean, I feel very much the Germans were the victims of 2 world wars. They didn't want either of them. They didn't start either of them.
Yeah, I agree totally. There are more authors who have written about that, and I have had them in my program as well.
Oh, really? Yes. Oh, right. Yeah. But I'd like to hear them. That's right. I'd like to hear them.
What made you wake up? Because I remember the moment that I saw the YouTube video of David Cole. David Cole.
David Cole, yes, right.
Who was David Steen later on, and now I don't know what he is, but that was a Jewish young guy walking about in Auschwitz with a guide, and he let himself explain everything with his video camera rolling. And then they came to this gas chamber where there was a normal door opening inwards. Mm-hmm. And some holes in the ceiling. There supposedly the Zyklon B was spread into the room. But as you say, Ernst Zundel later on tried to find the Zyklon B residues in the wall there.
Just coming back to what you're saying about David Cole, there's a very brilliant video of that, Desiree, very brilliant. Everyone should watch it. And he managed to ascertain that the whole damn thing was made after the war. You know, those holes in the roof you mentioned were built after the war by Stalin, and their excuse was, oh, this is what we think it might have looked like. Well, not really. No, this is just theatre of horror. It's fictional theatre of horror. And it's British atrocity propaganda, which, taking on too much realism, which should have been quietly buried at the end of the war, and instead was ratified and sanctioned and given a life of its own by the media. We need to make the conscious affirmation that we don't want to live with these nightmares that actually never happened.
Yeah, there are several points that I can comment on what you say. The first one that comes to my mind is I just did a workshop with Joe Dispenza, who explains that we have a lot of thoughts during the day, and most people have every day the same sort of thoughts. And when they get up in the morning, they do the same thing. So basically, their whole neurotransmitters and their whole wiring of the brain is so solid that the information is connected to every organ in their body. So that makes him say that their mind has become their body. So they're less wave and more particle. They are
right.
less energy and more matter. And then he says, sometimes we make thoughts up because they coincide with the stories that we have, with the convictions and the beliefs that we hold.
Right.
And that is my surprise about the interviews that were done with so-called Holocaust survivors, that they all come up with stories that are not the same, for one.
Not the same. And also, don't forget, Desiree, they're being paid for the stories. The German government pays every Holocaust survivor. Everyone who claims the Holocaust survivor gets paid. So there's a horrible motivation for these stories, you know.
Also, in addition to what I just said, that how our brains are working.
Yes.
That is very interesting. And the number of the 6 million is a number that I have come across. I think it was in the 1920s already.
Exactly, yes. In fact, long before that, right at the end of the last century, 1890s, it started up in the first Jewish Congress, and it started up in America as a Jewish fundraising ploy, claiming that 6 million European Jews were in danger or were in trouble. So 6 million became a kind of collective noun for the number of Jews in Europe. 6 million Jews were in trouble, and start with in Russia. 6 million Russian Jews were in dead trouble, you know. And then in the 1930s, it became 6 million Jews in the shadow of Hitler, you know. And then at Nuremberg, it finally went into the past tense. 6 million Jews have been killed. And it was just a mantric, repetitive process, like some incantation, as if somebody's casting a spell. Nothing whatsoever to do with science or mathematics or anybody counting anything. Absolutely nothing.
No. And now, what I'm so surprised about is that as a people, these individuals want to be known as victims.
Yeah. Why's that? Yeah. Why do they want to be known as victims? Why do they get upset if you tell them that their ancestors didn't die in dreadful gas chambers? You know, why do they need preposterous stories about soap and lampshades, which people still try to resuscitate, you know?
Yeah, I know.
Chemical analysis clearly showed it was pig skin and lampshades and not human. Oh no, the stories just keep going. And in some ways, you know, we like watching horror stories. People like horror stories.
Some people, I don't. But
No, I don't either. But maybe that's kind of spills over into reality, that people have want something to believe in, and this is a kind of nightmare story. And unfortunately, it totally delegitimizes and crushes the spirit of Germany, which I feel was a very glorious culture. You know, I feel Germany was a nation of poets and mystics, philosophers, artists, musicians.
A lot of culture coming from there. Yeah.
A lot of
culture coming from there.
Yeah, a lot of culture, and it was like the Christian heart of Europe, and it's being given this terrific guilt of something that it didn't actually do. I mean, it did make the decision to expel Jews, but, you know, Jews declared war on Germany in the 1930s, collectively, all the Jews in the world. There's a dreadful economic struggle. They were like enemy aliens, and moreover, Jews were continually putting out statements that we are going to start a war against Germany. Hitler will be smashed. We intend to start this war.
Yeah, they gave warning.
They did, yeah. So why was it so unethical for Germany to finally decide we are going to expel them? Which I think you'll find most other countries in Europe had done that one time or another.
Yeah, 140 countries have done that. So is there something, is there something wrong with those countries, or can it be that there's something about the people that they expel?
Yeah, well, the people that they expelled, I think it started with Rome about 50 AD, and then it was Alexandria, and one country or another, they experienced some sort of awful sting of the scorpion. That they try to be nice to Jews, try to get on with them, and then some kind of something goes wrong, and they want to expel them. And so I'm not judging or condemning Germany for this. I mean, what Germany wanted to do, a book just been published about the so-called final solution, which was to send them to Madagascar, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Have you heard this? This is a nice empty island. It's a paradise island, more or less empty. And they felt that was far better than sending them to Israel, which was fully inhabited, actually, by Palestinians. And that was what the Germans wanted to do, send Jews to Madagascar. Mm-hmm. And they'd have to do manual work, you know.
Yeah. They're not amused.
Not amused, no.
Did you know that there is in Russia, there is a large piece of land, a sort of republic, and they call it the Jewish Republic.
Right in the east Russia.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't hear about that, do you?
No, but I stumbled across it on my search parties, and and I thought, oh wow, but when you look at the way Jews make their living, it is always some parasitic sort of activity.
Yeah, and then when you look at the Torah, the Old Testament, you find them being given instructions to live in this way. It's always about how to plunder other nations, how to lend money with interest to other nations, how to grab the wealth of other nations. There's virtually nothing in it about how to earn an honest living.
Yeah. Well, are you aware of the document from 1489 where the rabbi of Arles in France writes to the Sanhedrin in Constantinople complaining that the king is demanding that they become Christians, and when they do, they have to give up all their possessions, and the people from the city are not very nice to them, trying to kill them or something. Mm-hmm. And the answer that comes back is a letter that has been found later on in a totally different place. Uh-huh. But the answer from the Sanhedrin in Constantinople is something like, what you say about the king and wanting you to convert to Christianity, do that, but keep Moses' word at heart. In other words, just pretend.
Yeah, this is what we call Marano Jews, weren't they?
Yeah, and crypto. Yeah. And then they say about that you have to give up your possessions, see that your sons become salesmen, so they can take the Christians' possessions in that way. And in terms that you say they are trying to kill you, make your sons doctors and pharmacists.
Yeah.
And who are the top dogs today in Western patent medicine and pharmaceutical industry and the universities?
Yeah, well, this is a huge question, how they always manage to climb up the top of life's slippery pole. But I'm really just a science historian. I'm a science historian, and I try to look at facts about what people call the Holocaust, and the primary sources, the primary sources that give numbers and figures, and they don't show Jews as being selectively killed off. The Jews are not dying any more than other people in the camps,
No.
And the intention was to send them eastwards moved out eastwards, and then possibly after the Madagascar plan collapsed, that was unfeasible, right? The plan was then to send them eastwards, and then they got sort of jammed up in Poland. That they couldn't. Some of them were sent to Russia, but a lot of them had to stay in the camps. And then the whole plan was to get useful work out of them and get industrial work, especially at the huge industrial camp called Auschwitz. Useful work out of them, and that did happen. That was successful, and they battled against epidemics. But in the primary source data that I examine in my book, there's absolutely no evidence of an intention to exterminate them, or even attempts to treat them cruelly. I'm not saying that this didn't happen, but there wasn't any centralized intention to do that. I mean, people were a bit more angry with Jews, but in the camps they were treated perfectly respectfully, but their skills and labour were valued, and there's no hint of any extermination going on of the Jews as such. Okay?
Yeah. No, I came across that as well. And I have here a passage from the Auschwitz gas chamber illusion that you, in school trips to Auschwitz, you wrote something like this. Let us hope the school children visitors are properly taught about the elegant swimming pool at Auschwitz, built by the inmates, who would sunbathe there on Saturday and Sunday afternoons while watching the water polo matches, and shown the paintings from its art class, which still exists, and on and on and on. I mean...
Yeah, right. Well, that got me into a lot of trouble, as you can imagine. People said, he's trying to make out that it was some sort of holiday camp, you know. But
no.
The point is, it was a hard-working labour camp, but they did have these amenities. You know, the weekends, there were water polo games in the swimming pool at Auschwitz. And in fact, personally, Desiree, I'd like to see a reconstruction of that Auschwitz camp, because I think people are so obsessed by the subject. It's like Auschwitz is like the spiritual centre of our modern world, you know. All people's dreams and ultimate values kind of focused on that camp, full images of what happened there and what didn't happen there. And I think if we could have a reconstruct, just the base camp, what we call Auschwitz 1, which has got the swimming pool, it's got the bakery, it's got the hospital, it's got the cinema, it's got the brothel, right? It's a reward.
Also, yeah.
And then it had money for the inhabitants, and they could buy a lot. They could buy, but you know, they could buy cigarettes if they're lucky, you know. And they sent out postcards to the relatives. They could have visitors coming to them, and what else was there? Well, I think that the hatchet band. That's an orchestras, and there was also quite a decent jazz type band, skiffle band, as Irving has shown. So, and then also they had kind of multicultural discussion groups, because it was a kind of melting pot of different, Poles and Russians and Jews all together, and some of them remember very moving experiences like playing, for example, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony together, or having discussions about what it was all about, why we're fighting each other, I think it was what the Germans set up there was quite a moving concept for me. And I think we live in a civilization that is very much based on lies and untruth, and above all, war. It always wants war. And the untruths that are set up about Germany have this rationale of justifying the war, whereas actually what Germany was trying to set up at Auschwitz, it was an expression, I think, of the German spirit, of what they wanted to do, and the camps sunk into some horror right at the end, 1944 and 45, with the carpet bombing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that was the reason that there was hunger and no medicine and all that sort of stuff. And that is how many people died in the camps, not because they were annihilated or something, but they were ill and
people say to me, weren't people beaten up in the camps? Well, Rudolf Hoss at Auschwitz, that's Hoss, okay, the commandant.
Yeah.
He had rules, regulations that SS officers could be court-martialed if they wrongly treated any inmates, or if they're found to strike or hit an inmate, they could be brought to trial and court-martialed for that. And the records of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think some sort of reconstruction of that camp in some psychological drama in some sort of way is something that our civilization seems to need, because of the terrific obsessive focus that we have in our culture,
Yeah. And I don't know whether that is your experience, but when I try to talk to people about this, they always come back at me with, and Mengele and the experiments. Did you come across that, and what did you find?
Well, Mengele is kind of archetypal figure, isn't he? He has sort of eyeballs up on his wall with out of victims, and Mengele always features in every account of somebody who remembers being at Auschwitz. And Mengele comes up, and there's a separation. Now the separation, I think, is a lot of elderly, frail, or sick people who are kept at Birkenau. Like Birkenau, that was a huge camp, a couple of miles from the base camp. And by the way, Birkenau is where the actual gas chambers were located, the delousing chambers, right? They're the ones that are, all the walls are blue, and you put all your clothing and mattresses and bedding in them with the cyanide gas to be deloused. So that happened at Birkenau, right? And there's a huge residential quarter there, and many of the people who arrived were not fit enough to do useful work. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the separation that people talk about.
Yeah.
There's moving accounts of people being separated from their parents or something, and people would go on to be given work, have to do work every day, and other people at Birkenau were too ill and sick to do that. I mean, Mengele, what can I say? It's just an archetypal story there was a account up on a revisionist site I go to called CODOH, CODOH. That's the main revisionist site. A son, or I think it was son of Mengele, said he never did any unpleasant experiments on anyone, and came to defend his father's name. I mean, I would recommend not believing these little Western stories. They're just brewed up.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with what I know of Germans.
But also the actual account of the hospital there. For example, they had some very advanced X-ray amenities. There's accounts of people who were in Auschwitz who were treated ill and got better, okay? And hospital amenities there were relatively advanced, like having some sort of X-ray treatment, or having doctors from Germany come and help in the hospital there. For example, there are various accounts of people being in that hospital and recovering, what kind of, and the idea of experiments. Well, I just don't know but people do have these stories about experiments going on. I just don't know.
Well, I don't know either, but yeah, if you have twins, that's always very intriguing to doctors to see how twins behave if you address them differently. So yeah, you can do that in a very soft way and in a very harsh way, of course. I don't know what happened there, but the stories are that he was a sort of satanic idiot going on with his twin research.
Well, I think we need to try and get back to first-hand accounts. First-hand accounts I've seen of people being treated in that hospital are very different from that. That's what I can say.
Yeah. Another thing is logic. How logical is it that a country that is at war, that needs every bit of fuel it has for war effort, that they spend, I don't know how many gas and stuff and fuel for crematoria. I mean, It's
And
simply not logic.
the logic is that of a hallucinatory nightmare that has got no reality whatever. I mean, why gas 6 million Jews or kill them for no reason? There's absolutely no reason given why they want to do that. And as you say, they're at war. And what they're actually trying to do with these camps, for example, they've got a huge chemical works at Auschwitz called Monowitz, and they've got literally thousands of people working in this enormous chemical plant, okay? And that has it's very advanced technology. It's getting oil for the German war machine out of coal, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's doing. And also it's making rubber, synthetic rubber, okay?
Yeah. Right.
That's the main thing that's going on at Auschwitz, at the Monowitz plant right next to Auschwitz. And to do that, you can't possibly be exterminating people if you're getting that useful work out of them. And also there were huge quite large blast furnaces at Auschwitz, several of them, which would be making things with iron. All this, which you're never allowed to hear about, certainly not in my country. In Britain, the media can never ever talk about the actual purpose of Auschwitz in terms of useful industrial work. That's absolutely forbidden, okay? You just see pictures of people in striped pajamas waiting about to be gassed, and that's all you get, you know?
Yeah.
And as you say, it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, if people are trying to fight a war, what would be the point of this, you know?
It's a division of their attention then. They need to focus on the war effort and not on exterminating people.
Yeah. So there's no logic. And also, if they had wanted to gas people, if by chance they had a gas called producer gas, carbon monoxide, which is mainly carbon monoxide, which they could have used and it would have worked if there's some way of getting people into a large room, you know, which they couldn't break out of. There were no such large rooms in the German labor camps, but if they did have large rooms, producer gas could have been used. And it wasn't. They had this Zyklon was made to be fairly safe for human use. It was slow release, so you could use it in the delousing chambers, and it was fairly safe. And that is part of the reason why it wouldn't have been much use if you're trying to kill people with it.
I heard a story about a boy who was in a hospital where some people came into a room with a canister. And they opened the canister, they closed the windows, they opened the canister, left the room, and half an hour later they came back and they had deloused the room, including the patients, with Zyklon B. And after opened the windows, and that was it. So
what do you mean including the patients?
the patients were still in their beds while the Zyklon B was being used in that room to delouse.
Well, that does sound a bit unlikely. I would have thought people wouldn't be in the room while it was happening.
Apparently,
certainly all the rooms would be deloused. The bedrooms, the toilets, several times a year. That would happen. It's the way you stop the epidemic of typhus, right?
Yes.
All blacks were killed, and that was a routine procedure. It's possible you might not have quite heard it properly, but the story of there being somebody in the bed.
Well, it was a testimonial that Renz had in his.
Oh, wasn't it? Oh, Renz. Oh, right.
Shows to someone who had experienced that himself, apparently.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well.
To illustrate that it won't kill easily, will kill people.
Yeah. Well, let's emphasise that it's quite difficult to kill people with cyanide, and you can only do it one person at a time in a chamber.
And they will be pink afterwards. And they will be pink afterwards?
Exactly, they'll be pink afterwards. That's so important what you just said. You end up with a pink body, and there's absolutely no account whatever anywhere in Nuremberg of a pink body, is there?
No.
It's absolutely not there. And they got the science badly wrong. People brewing up this hallucinatory nightmare that they fail to cognize and understand that you would have huge piles of pink bodies, bright pink, bright shocking pink, with 80 or 90% of them bright shocking pink. And the same actually goes for carbon monoxide, oddly enough. That also gives you a pink body.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So even if you think kill people with carbon monoxide, which that is part of the story of the Holocaust, that will still won't work because there are no pink bodies. The testimonies at Nuremberg had green bodies, greenish pallor, bluish pallor, black. so they got the colour totally wrong.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Well, it's just really bad science.
Yeah, it's strange that they are sloppy in their story. What is that about?
And likewise with the whole story of diesel exhaust being used at Treblinka, that was a transit camp. It's not a labour camp like Auschwitz. It's on the border of Poland, and it was just a transit camp. That means that people stopped off there for a day or two to get cleaned up a bit. And they made up the story there of using diesel exhaust to that was
also diesel exhaust I heard mention, but that will not work at all, I understand.
Exactly, it won't work at all. It won't work at all because the whole point of diesel in a car is that it totally burns up the carbon and there is no carbon monoxide. So if you try and commit suicide with diesel exhaust, it just won't work. You just give you a headache, just get a bad headache. And that's all. So at Nuremberg, they said 800,000 Jews have been killed at Treblinka, and they first of all said it was done by steaming. They were steamed. Then they found people didn't believe that. Odd enough, people just didn't believe it. So they changed it to diesel exhaust. Okay, and so you got the story of what people sometimes call 1/3 of the Holocaust. That 1 or 2 million Jews altogether were killed by diesel exhaust. That becomes a major part of the story, and then it's not until the 1980s that it really dawns on people. This is one of the things that revisionists really accomplished, that diesel exhaust is not actually a lethal gas, and they couldn't have done it that way.
No. I think it's either they are taken up by their own myths and sort of lose track of reality altogether in their fantasy, or they simply think we are stupid or something. I don't know.
No. But tell me, Desiree, you're in Holland, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, people tell me denying Holocaust is a crime in Holland, but I don't think it is. I don't think you've got what we've got HD law. You haven't got a law banning Holocaust denial as such in Holland, have you?
I'm not sure. The only thing I know is that once I wrote a column in a medical journal, and that was about organ donation, and I said something like, in Israel, I'm wondering whether they object to having a Palestinian liver because the Holocaust, the Israelis are addressing to the Palestinians. That must mean that there are many, many organs that they can use for organ donation, for transplantation. And what happened next was that I got a letter through my editor of many of the advertisers, and the Jews came out of the woodwork. I mean, a whole list of names of people who objected to my Holocaust with not a capital H, but a lowercase h on purpose. But the word itself was like Pavlov. It was incredible.
Amazing, yeah. But so, did you lose your job there or what?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No.
Oh, right. Well, that's really good. Well done.
And then later on, in 2009, I wrote a book about the HPV vaccines and the cervical cancer crap. It has nothing to do with the one with the other. But that's another cooked up story. And then the interviewer asked me, but who are these people who are perpetrating these things? I said, look at Rothschild, Rockefeller, the Flexner Report, that sort of thing.
Right.
And it's Khazars. It's Khazar Jews. Oh, wow, that was it. So they had a headline. I forgot exactly which, but all of a sudden I was this crappy grandmother with a wrong message or something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
But there
yeah.
were two people who immediately called me the next day when they saw the article in that paper. And one of them is a Jewish doctor that I know very well. And he said,
Right.
if these people of the ADL, the Dutch ADL, so to speak,
Yeah.
if they ever going to bother you, you call me, because then I will prep you what to say, and then they will be silent.
Right.
I thought, okay, there must be something you can say that will take care of the whole matter.
Right. Well, but it still sounds, you see, Holland is a place that very much treasures freedom of thought. Historically, it's been known as a country that respects and defends freedom of thought. And people have fled to Holland when they would be, people like Descartes and stuff. They came to Holland because they knew Holland stood for tolerance and freedom of thought.
Yeah, not so much more these days. And
Not so much.
especially with the
Well, I
Holland.
think it's terribly important for Dutch people to hang on to that tradition.
Oh, yeah.
For example, the great Dutch philosopher Spinoza, right? Spinoza was excommunicated by the Catholic Church because he didn't believe the Bible, Old Testament was written by Moses, okay? Or something like that. And then, in those days, being excommunicated was very terrible. But he did go through that because he believed in saying what he felt. That's why he's a great philosopher, that he could express these things. And he's also known for writing books about just laws that are just. So I feel that's a terribly important Dutch tradition to hang on to, right in the middle of Europe, for not having unjust laws and for freedom of thought. And so I do hope the Dutch people will take strenuous measures not to allow people to be put in jail for believing the wrong thing.
Well, it's being nibbled at. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, okay. So you can talk about it like we're talking about it now, but you won't as such be put in jail like in quite a lot of other countries. You know, Italy has just passed a law now banning denial of the Holocaust. Russia has passed a law banning denial of the Holocaust. And so it's really all over the place. It's terrible.
Yeah. Well, think about Sylvia Stolz and Ursula Haverbeck in Germany.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? She's in her 90s. She gives a brilliant and totally lucid account on television of why Germans are not guilty, and they just put her in jail. I mean, that's so appalling.
Yeah, but even Rijke Geert Hamer, a doctor who works with cancer and looks at the emotional side of it, but he also has brain scans on which he can recognize when a trauma has happened, what sort of trauma it is, and what sort of cancer in which part of the body it will result in. And he has spoken out about Holocaust and that sort of thing. And so they threw him in jail. They picked him up in Spain and threw him in jail in France.
Oh, well, what nationality is it? Is he German?
He is a German, yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. Well,
so strange things happen.
They picked him up in Spain, you say?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's free now again, but yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. And as you say, Sylvia Stolz, she was just defending Ernst Zundel as a lawyer.
Yeah.
She was defending him. And they said, oh, this defense of yours is a bit too convincing. Sounds like you believe it as well. So they put her in jail.
Yeah.
And that's exactly like what happened several centuries ago when witches were being prosecuted in Europe. And if a judge was too lenient, and saying, oh, maybe these are people not in a pact with the devil after all, they'd say, oh, this lenient judge is, must be in a pact with the devil, and the judges get thrown in jail as well. So there's a fear of being too lenient because of this form of accusation, which is what's happening now.
Yeah, I see that happening in America right now, that sort of thing. And also the other way around, that judges have opinions where they should not express them. and taking a position, taking a stand against Donald Trump, for instance. There's this scandal now of this Jewish judge who retracted her statement recently and said she wouldn't do it anymore like that. So yeah, people are being forced to not be themselves, not state their truth, not live their truth. Or if they do that, do it stealthily. What sort of a world is this?
Yeah, well, I think it's important for us to affirm that we Europeans need to be European together, and we don't want to live in fear, and we don't need an enemy. And it's a terrible thing that Britain and Germany fought each other, and this mythology we're talking about is a hangover. It's a leftover from that. In a sense, both world wars. The gassing claim was made in both world wars.
Yeah, but isn't it a part of the occasion they created for starting the State of Israel?
Well, that's another thing, of course. That's a different logic. So several different countries were involved for different reasons in blaming Germany and framing this awful untruth. And Israel, obviously, we're talking about the myth that created Israel, right? Israel came out of this story that it was born, it was given to European Khazar Jews as a result of this story that they successfully perpetrated. And I think there is, from their point of view, a real risk that if people stop believing the story, the state of Israel would disintegrate. I mean, I can see that fear.
Exactly, yeah. But
because
it's
all the donations it keeps getting, it gets about $2 billion a year, I was told, from Germany, and it gets far more than that from America.
Exactly.
Very much Holocaust guilt money that they managed to somehow they managed to keep it going, don't they?
Yeah, and it's amazing that Israel is perpetrating on steroids what they accuse the Germans of.
I mean,
they do the Palestinians.
If we go back to the Nuremberg trials in the late 1940s, middle 1940s, Eisenhower had a vast death camp set up with over 1 million Germans put in the camp and just being left to starve, and people were forbidden from feeding them. They were just out in the open with no shelter or food. That was absolutely deliberate mass murder. And that was going on at the same time as these outrageous untruths, or let's call it by a proper name, the greatest lie ever told, while that was being formulated at Nuremberg. Okay? The greatest lie ever told was brewed up of a deliberate intention to exterminate 6 million Jews at a time when actual extermination of Germans was going on by Eisenhower, who obviously was himself Jewish.
Yeah, exactly, that too. Yeah, it's amazing. And there are other authors who speak about that, and as far as I'm concerned, the real Holocaust was the carpet bombing of Dresden and of the other German cities where people really were burned and there was no escape. And so that the Bilderberg Group this year had its meeting in Dresden was very elegant, I thought.
Yeah, as you say, 2.5 million tons of bombs were dropped in Central Europe by Britain and America, incinerating the lovely cultural treasures of Europe. All the lovely cities of Middle Europe were totally pulverized and incinerated, deliberately burning women and children in the greatest crime ever conceived by the mind of man. Nothing else quite compares with that. And that is, at Nuremberg, the Allies said, oh, no, we don't want to mention that. No, we don't talk about that. Oh, no, that's not on the agenda. But they wanted the moral high ground, and to get the moral high ground, they brewed up this story of what Germans had allegedly done, which was called the Holocaust. And that's enabled them not to talk about this this dreadful way of waging war.
Yeah, and still today people are being brainwashed every day, because when we had the first influx of the so-called immigrants or refugees, there was a politician who said, oh, the first thing they need to go to is the Anne Frank house and the COC, which is the gay sexual organization.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
The refugees?
Yeah. Send the Muslims to the Anne Frank house. Yeah, because those are our customs. And I thought, what? Not mine.
Nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Anne Frank, she was at Auschwitz, and her father was ill there, and he was in the hospital, and he recovered, okay? He recovered.
Otto, yeah.
And then Anne Frank herself went, when Auschwitz was liberated, she chose to go westwards with the retreating German army rather than with the Soviets. A lot of people were much more frightened of the Soviets than the Nazis. She went with the Nazis to Bergen-Belsen, the camp, and she died there of typhus.
Yes.
So there was not enough Zyklon to save her from the typhus epidemic, because at the end of the war, that camp became enormously overpopulated. It had about 50,000 people there, and it was only designed to take a few thousand. And I think they didn't have food or water in the last days of that camp, horrific days. And that is why you get such atrocity propaganda, which the Allies made after the war from Bergen-Belsen, you know.
Yeah.
The dreadful, frightful images of piles of stiffs there. Instead of saying, "Oh, this is a result of Anglo-American policy, bombing everything," you know, it could be made, and still is used as atrocity propaganda.
Yeah, well, that sort of propaganda is being used through the ages. I remember when I was investigating smallpox, it turned out that the American people got the smallpox vaccines a popular thing because they were shown photographs from England of victims of smallpox vaccinations. People that had been vaccinated with cowpox in England, they had dreadful wounds and they lost their arms where they had been vaccinated and all that sort of stuff. And those photos or those pictures were used in America to propagandize that people needed to take the smallpox vaccines. But the photos that they were shown was vaccine damage, not smallpox damage.
Oh, right. Yes.
So those quirks, they do that all the time.
Come back to what you said about Anne Frank. We've got statues of Anne Frank all over the place in London. It's amazing. She these bronze statues in museums and stations, and it's just a sort of iconic thing that's being plastered all over the place. I mean, what I heard is that you can't see the original manuscript, which might have been written by her uncle or something. It's quite doubtful who wrote it.
I read the book when I was a teenager, and I found the language rather mature for such a young girl.
Right.
But it was already for me something like, oh, really? But then again, that was attributed to the fact that Jews are smarter than we are, right?
Right.
They try to.
They are smart. Let's not deny it. You know, they have got high IQ generally, but I think we need to avoid believing their stories. The deep problem for the human race. In a sense, Jews are the longest-lasting ethnic group. They've, from one point of view, have been around for several thousand years. It's a problem that won't go away, but I think that we need to be careful, and they are storytellers, wonderful storytellers, But we need to be careful of accepting their histories, the histories that they claim.
Yeah, we should not let ourselves be mesmerized.
No, no.
Yeah, I agree.
And given bad legislation, they're trying to make so-called hate legislation, claiming don't believe or accept what they say that is hate, which isn't at all. It has nothing to do with hate.
No. But there is this quote from a cabinet member or someone like that in Israel, a woman who says something like, in America we always come with the Holocaust, and in Europe we call them an anti-Semite. It's just we do it like that, and then they shut up. Sort of, their tactic to shut everybody up.
Well, the Ashkenazis in Europe aren't Semites at all. They really aren't.
No.
Absolutely not, in any sense whatever.
They have no right to Blut und Boden in Israel either. They are from the Khazar area. Southern Russia.
Anyway, I think that following what we discussed, that Holland is a country where you're allowed to discuss these matters. I think there'll be intimidation. They'll try to make out that your discussion may cause a disturbance of the peace. That's the legal basis for objecting to it, you see. And what I would suggest for any Dutch people watching this is that you say, we do want to talk about this, we are allowed to talk about it, and you then do it, and you then say, you see, there was no disturbance at all of the peace. We're all perfectly relaxed, nobody's disturbed, because that is the only basis on which the police will try to break up such a meeting, that it might upset people. There are certain groups that will claim that they're being upset by this, and they're not actually. They're not upset at all. They're just pretending because they want to suppress free speech.
But I find that many people in Holland have been so indoctrinated with the stories that you have debunked in your book by scientific searching and logic and physical reasons, that sort of thing. But then again, there is this thing, cognitive dissonance. If people have heard for ages about the poor Jews and this and that and the whole 6 million and the gas chambers and the whole rigmarole, and you come with a different story, that is a total shock.
Well, it is a total shock, yeah. But what I find, Desiree, if you look at articles on the web, if you look at any news report about the Holocaust, which is non-stop, okay, just about every week we get a story about the Holocaust. And as if it happened just yesterday, not 70 years ago, or as if the war was still going. I suggest ignore the article and just look at web comments. Look at the comments if they're allowed. That's what's important. What I found that since around about 2010, the comments were mainly angry and sceptical. Before then, I found, for example, when I was thrown out of my college, nearly everybody believed the story, and it was like some dogma that everyone was supposed to accept. And I feel that the tide is turning now. And if you look at web comments now, that's the only way we have of assessing what the general feeling is, because there's no survey of the public or but web comments indicate people are fed up, they don't believe it anymore, and they've absolutely had enough, and they think we want a bit of truth in stories of what Jews are doing. For example, the whole Second World War, what was it about? Why did we fight it? Why did 60 million people die? I would say you're not going to get a sensible discussion of that at all until you've got over this issue. Because this issue we're talking about gives you the totally diabolical image of the Nazis, doesn't it? They're the ultimate wicked people, that they're actually pure evil. You get the comic book concept of pure evil, which is not in the real world at all, right? It's American comic book stuff of these are the bad guys, and therefore we've got to kill them. You know, That's American comic book stuff, and that is used to justify what the Second World War was about.
Yeah, it's an emotional warfare on people to put them on the wrong foot. So
It is emotional warfare. That's a very good phrase. It's an
Yeah.
emotional warfare on people, and how do we recover from that? How do we cope with this emotional warfare? Well, we get together in groups, and we share our views in groups, and share our kind of rage. Have we been lied to so badly all this time? You know, what really happened? And that is how we can, I think, recover our sort of human values. And I mean, revisionism should be something continually allowed in history. History demands continual revisionism. Instead, revisionists, as regards World War II, are kind of slagged off as if there's something depraved about them, you know.
Yeah, but history as is written down in our school books is never the real thing. Never. It's all written by the victor. You read the history book about the same situation, but the history book for schools in a different country, you have a different book. You have a different story.
A different story, right. Well, that's why Europeans need to talk amongst each other and demand, look, Europa is a wonderful place. It's got this wonderful patchwork of different cultures with thousands of years old tradition, and we actually want to rescue it. We want to hold it together. We want Europa as the soul of Europe to be glorious and to shine, and it can do that if it can access the power of truth, of what really is, and not accept the main source of lies now comes from military intelligence, okay? Military intelligence, and especially British and American military intelligence, obviously with Israeli input. But that is the worst, most frightful source of untruth on planet Earth that we get. And it generates hate and fear, and it's supposed to, because the point of it is to ratify whatever war is going on, right?
Or it's being created,
or it's being created, and so it's important for us to say, hang on, these are not actually the case. That this isn't really happening. We don't want all our politicians to be controlled and governed by stories brewed up by military intelligence like this. That this is very, very harmful. We need the light of truth on this.
Yes,
absolutely. That's why I think it's so desperately important.
Yeah, and another thing in the Netherlands is that we have many people who, before the Second World War, lived in Indonesia, what is now Indonesia.
Oh, right.
A Dutch colony.
Yeah.
And during the war, many of the Dutch people living in Indonesia were interned in camps of Japanese.
Right.
Talk about death camps, that is the Japanese camps. They were working camps, but the most famous one is, of course, where people were put to work at the Burma Railway, which was in the tropics, in full sunshine, no water, and these Japanese guys with whips, so you kept working, otherwise that was it. And not a word about that almost in the Netherlands. While I know that there are still living a lot of people who have been in these camps and are still traumatized by that. I know of women who have been abused as they call it troostmeisjes, comfort girls, prostitutes in other words. Well, cope with that in the rest of your life. I mean, rape is horrible, but I cannot imagine what it must be like to be abused as a comfort girl, so to speak.
No.
And also for the men, it was much more difficult. But it's always about the Jews in Holland, and oh yeah, there was these Japanese camps also. Oh yeah, well, Nobody gives any notice. Many children, school children, don't know anything about it. And in my own family, I have many people who have been traumatized by that period. And my own father died very young because he had been in the camp.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I think a way of getting over trauma is actually just to be able to talk about it and have someone listen to it and feel the pain, and just over it.
Yes, but then there is the danger that you go into it so deeply that you relive it, and in that sense, you would be ingraining it even further in your system. So you should not go that deep. You can speak about it, but then go another way to neutralize it.
Right.
You go again through that emotion, to that same emotion, you damage a person.
Yeah. Well, certainly Europe has got kind of traumas buried in it and sort of nightmares, like we're frightened of being ourselves. And that's why we came out of the Second World War with the Soviets, Stalin occupying one half of Europe, and then America and NATO moving in on the other half. And we had the NATO alliance and everything, which means Europe can't trust itself. That was the end of what Winston Churchill actually did with that war. Europe was divided up, and it lost its sovereignty, its ability its confidence in being able to be itself, as if there were frightful, tendencies that might emerge if NATO or the Soviet Union were to leave, and Europe doesn't have confidence in being itself anymore. So that's the thing we inherited from the Second World War.
And that's even worse today, because with Black Lives Matter, they try to give a guilt complex to every white European American.
That's something else. I think it's
something else. And so, but they build on that previous layer in the story, I think.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's important to know what really happened in Auschwitz, and it was a work camp, not a camp where people were in millions.
Yeah, and also more Catholics died than Jews, as far as the records are concerned. That comes from the death books at Auschwitz.
Also, yeah.
So it isn't some big, especially unique, privileged Jewish suffering.
No.
And I feel we need to affirm that we value the culture of Germany and we want it to re-emerge as Germany without selling nuclear submarines to Israel. And we want to affirm, if it's not too late, that Germany should exist. At the moment, it's self-extinguishing its existence, and the burden of guilt is, as it were, too much to bear.
Yeah.
And it's welcoming alien cultures in at a scale that will, threatens to wipe out Germany. I think we need to affirm that we want the culture of Germany to survive and blossom.
Well, yeah, also the Dutch and the English and the French culture, because
we want the mosaic of European cultures.
Yeah.
To not be afraid of each other. We don't need this enormous military that we've got, which partly comes out of the exaggerated fears of the Second World War. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the manipulations of a small group of people who are hungry for more while they already almost have almost everything.
Well, they haven't, yes.
Yeah. So we are in dire straits. I mean, World War II was very bad, but I'm not sure what we are.
Well, my feeling is, Desiree, that we need to believe in some sort of truth movement. That the power of truth is what is most needed now, because the soul-shattering illusions that we're given, which generate fear, and what we are, as it were, the victims. Whenever we get some state-fabricated terror event set up in the media, I mean, we've got a quite different enemy in this 21st century. We're given Islamic enemy all the time. And in the two world wars, we were given Germany as the enemy. I would say that we should try and retell the story of the two world wars, that in a way that people can appreciate that Germany didn't want the wars and did everything it possibly could to avoid the wars.
Yeah, they did.
I would say that it was Britain that initiated the wars in both cases, and I would say that it was Britain that foolishly wanted the wars.
Yeah. And they were jealous of Germany that it picked up itself so quickly after World War One. And I don't know exactly when that was, but there was a period in the United States that products made in Germany were smashed and broken and thrown away just with one objective: to ruin Germany, because it happened so quickly.
Yeah. Well, that would have been in the 1930s when Germany was having an economic revival, which is quite unprecedented. No other country in the world has ever had such a massive, fast economic revival, because it freed its currency from the Rothschilds, international bankers.
And that's the key. And what happened to Libya? Gaddafi wanted to do the same thing.
Exactly, yeah. Gaddafi was doing the same thing with the dinar, the African dinar, which was gold-based.
And the guy in Iraq as well.
The whole of Africa would be having this wonderful beginning of prosperity, having its own currency, the dinar. That's why they had to smash Gaddafi, as you so rightly pointed out.
Yeah. And Gaddafi, same story.
And if you go back a bit earlier in history, Americans were having their greenbacks. The Americans, I think about 200 years ago, they printed their own greenback currency, which was not controlled by the British Empire or Rothschild bankers.
Until 1913, right?
I think so. I'm not quite sure, but they got a war with Britain as a consequence of that. Britain said this is intolerable, because America was having such prosperity with this greenback currency. Had to be stopped. So this is always the most deeply forbidden thing, and that is precisely what Germany did in the 1930s. And that is the only country, European country in the 20th century, which managed to do that. Okay, no other country got that independence of the banking system.
Well, isn't Iceland trying to do a thing like that also?
Oh, it is. Yeah. That's what I said in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Iceland, at a much smaller scale, does, as you say, does seem to have managed something like that, doesn't it? Seems to be surviving rather well.
Yeah, it's amazing. They just said no. It was that easy, basically.
But it's amazing the stories one hears about National Socialist Germany in the 30s. I heard that if a couple got their own home, you would get a mortgage that was interest-free, okay? Interest-free, and you would get 25% off that mortgage for every child you had.
Look at that.
So 4 kids, you'd have a free home the rest of your life. And so that was encouraging breeding, right? It was encouraging the Germans to have kids. And
look at Europe now.
Right.
Yeah, we need 2.1 child per family, and we have 1.6. So
1.6. Is that the European average?
Yeah.
Roughly European average, yeah. It's catastrophically below.
We are in dire straits. It's I don't know how we can turn that around, because what I see around me is that people find their careers more important than...
Yeah, right. Well, if in our sort of atomistic consumer society, where the purpose of existence is for people to consume and have fun, as it were.
Yeah.
They're not motivated to have kids. Women say, well, why should I go through all that stress? And it's financially so difficult to get your own property if you're also having kids. And the result is that immigrants get much more by way of grants for them having kids than natives of the country.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I think that what happened in the 1930s in National Socialist Germany was it was in many ways people having a good time. I also heard that there were free or highly subsidized boat trips for German workers, right? And that they were never allowed to dock in British ports in these poach holidays because the British government didn't want English workers to find out what the Germans were getting,
Yeah, right.
because they would never have agreed to fight them if they could have seen Germans getting these nice holidays and hear their stories about what life was like in
the real stories about the real situation. Yeah.
I mean, what we've been talking about is the most highly kids are taught get taught about the Holocaust more heavily in schools now than anything else at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I were probably never taught about it, wasn't it? When we were at school, we weren't taught about it, were we?
No, not really. No.
Not really, no. And
No,
now they get it.
From my years 6 to 12 years old, I only remember that we got a mug with the orange lion on it that so many years ago the war was over.
Oh, right.
Like in 1955, 10 years ago, we had freedom. So that sort of thing was happening. I never heard about Anne Frank then.
No. Now they get the Holocaust in religion lessons and history lessons.
Yes,
in drama lessons.
Yeah.
Social service lessons. They're all taught to hate Germany,
Yeah. It is hard to bring that into balance towards the truth, because, as I said, the propaganda, as you say, is very heavy, and the cognitive dissonance is very large. But yeah, we keep working at bringing. I mean, that's all I do, and that's what you do, and that is our task. What somebody else does with that is their business.
Yeah. So I would urge anyone listening to this in Holland, or especially in Holland, to say, yes, we can have public meetings about this. Nobody is alarmed. Nobody's upset. Nobody breaches the peace. We're talking about it, and it's a public meeting, and we just do it. Okay? I think now the situation has changed, and you can do it. You actually can, and it's very therapeutic for people to talk about this together. And what I've been told, and so on. Share your experiences and your stories, and don't accept that something is forbidden like that. So I would suggest that, especially any sort of truth group, does allow itself to focus on World War II.
Maybe you should come to the Netherlands again in Aalsmeer, where we met in May, and talk about this. Have a public conversation with the room about it. After a presentation where you present the facts that you have.
Oh, right. Well, maybe, maybe, yeah. I'm sure I'm not the only person. There are other people in Europe.
Yeah, I know. We'll find them.
But
because I want also to slice through all that propaganda. I mean, when I look at younger people and I hear them talk, I think, gosh, is that how we are going to win the war? Because they are so ignorant of basic facts. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it may be something in Russia that you get well-educated kids now and not totally submerged in American, computer junk, iPhones and stuff, and who actually read books. I think we've got a generation now that doesn't read books.
Exactly. Yeah.
And especially Muslims in around here, I don't think Muslims read books. So we are. I think we are coming to a reaction, a more oral culture that won't want to read a lot of books and remember a lot of stuff. and maybe is more manipulated by American films and propaganda.
Yes, and kids' brains are being compromised by vaccines. I mean, the performance of their brains is
Really?
considerably less than when you have not been vaccinated.
Really?
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah, and the diet. I mean, aspartame and
Well, certainly the
sodium
diet, yeah,
glutamate.
aspartame, and especially mobile phones.
Yeah, no, a combination of all those things. Oh gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Not in Holland. We don't have fluoride in water.
No, that's something, yeah.
That is something, because that will take 10 to 15 points of your IQ, not percentages, but points.
Really, as much as that?
As much as that, yeah.
Goodness. Oh.
And so we don't have that, but the vaccine program in Holland is ludicrous. I mean, they start at 6 weeks with vaccines with aluminium in it.
Oh no, aluminium.
And a crazy amount, yeah. I fleeced all the product inserts of all the vaccines, the product inserts by the producers of the vaccine. I fleeced all the information out of them to see what's in the vaccines, how they are created, on what sort of culture medium, because also from the culture mediums, all sorts of crap comes into the vaccines. And nobody talks about that. And nobody talks about that vaccination is a, how you say that? Like with radiation, it's cumulative.
Cumulative, yeah. How about mercury? Is there any mercury in them?
No, not anymore. But mercury
right.
is being used in the production process, so there can be tiny traces of it still in. But aluminum is the biggest thing, and aluminum has come into vaccines in 1926, when nobody was bothering about safety or whatever. And these days, the scientists speak about, oh yes, but aluminum has been for such a long time in vaccines, it's totally okay. That's very scientific, right? Yeah. So
it is very bad for mental focus and concentration. Aluminium.
Absolutely.
Disturbed, violent, heavy metal kids tend to have high lead, aluminium, and cadmium.
Yeah. But it makes
those are the bad elements that you don't want in your blood, in the kid's bloodstream.
No, and aluminum will make the cell permeable, so all sorts of stuff can come into the cells that should not be there.
Goodness.
It's amazing. But yeah, so
we were just talking about the difficulty of the kids in focusing on learning stuff nowadays.
Yeah. And what I remember from my school days, I got bloody bored, because what they do is they say, open your mouth and here you have a dead fish. This is it and that's it, and no discussion. And learning should be an adventure. You should be like doing research like we do. That is how you learn. I've never learned so much since I've done research, started doing research.
Right.
Because then you own the material. It's your own discovery.
Yeah, sure. Well, I feel we need some sort of peace groups, anti-war groups, that are going to take the attitude of why the war is not necessary. I mean, go over past wars, who wanted these to happen, who made them happen. And we need that understanding. That's terribly historically important, because we live in a culture now that's always been given bogus reasons for war. Like NATO now. NATO is always at war, right? So I feel one thing important for us to try and do is go over these past wars, especially the First and Second World Wars, and look at why they didn't need to happen. You know, there wasn't the wicked bogeyman. And drop it. Whatever the problem is, bombing other people's cities is not the answer.
No.
Never ever the answer. And we need that as a kind of as I'm trying to get that through as a sort of moral imperative.
But isn't NATO the private army of the Rothschilds?
Well, I think nobody quite knows who or what is making NATO function. I mean, it started off as North Atlantic Treaty, and for like 40 or 50 years, it never got into a war. It was defined as a defensive alliance that couldn't ever go outside Europe. So it was there just for a sort of Cold War situation for a long time. And then
the Cold War was bogus as well.
Sorry?
The Cold War was bogus as well, because America and Russia worked together in all sorts of ways under the radar.
Well, okay, yeah, maybe they did. But as this new century began, NATO then suddenly abandoned its North Atlantic Treaty, and it got a new Washington Agreement, which meant it could go out and attack anyone, and it then started in Kosovo. And since then Afghanistan, I would say that nobody really knows who is controlling NATO or how its decisions are made. Nobody seems to know, do they?
Yeah, well, it's very much in line with what the New World Order wants. So, yeah. But did you know that NATO has workshops every year, every summer, in nice places in Europe about niche subjects? And afterwards, the papers of all the attending scientists are bundled in a book, and they sell that.
All right.
So I have a book about biology of aggression with an article in it from Delgado, the guy who put electrodes in the brain of a steer with the flip of a switch, stopped the steer attacking him. And I have a book about vaccines, two actually, and another one about omega-3 fatty acids.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody knows that, but these books are very interesting to really check the articles to know what they're up to.
Right, yes.
So yeah, it's amazing. And from one of these books, I have that passage that I said that aluminum has been grandfathered in vaccines in 1926, and the author said, I'm not so sure if today aluminum would be put into vaccines, whether that would pass the committee to determine the safety of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, some things are being done to us with an air of that everybody knows what's what and how scientific it is. But
that's what everybody fears and feels these days, that things are being done to us. We're not being consulted. It's not for our own good. And you get people talking about stuff like chemtrails.
Yeah.
We're not quite sure what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we're sure about is that they're not telling us.
Yeah, they're not telling. But we see them every day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a very strange world, because I would think if all the effort that is being made now to make our lives miserable with chemtrails and Western medicine and vaccines and you name it, the food and the water and the Fukushima and you know it, if all the effort was being used in the right way, this planet would be heaven for everybody.
Poor. And how could we get the decisions to make it and use it in the right way then? How could we, what kind of process could make those decisions?
Well, the only place where you can change something is within yourself. You can never change somebody else.
Right.
So wanting to change the Rothschilds to stop fleecing everybody with their interest rates and their paper money and so on, you can forget about that. The only thing we can do, I think, is educate ourselves to what's really going on, and then vote with our wallet, like not buying, not organic food, not buying crazy water, aspartame drinks, and so on.
Yeah.
But that means that people need to do an effort to heighten their awareness, to increase their awareness and their consciousness. And I don't see that happen too much yet. There are exceptions when I meet people that I would never have expected that they know things like what we are talking about. And it turns out they do.
Yeah. Okay. But I met one chap in Amsterdam, on something called Knowledge Matters.
Yeah.
Sandra at Knowledge Matters.
Yeah, yeah.
And he talked about possibly having some conference in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that will happen. He hasn't been back in touch with me. Do you know him at all?
No, but I know how to reach him. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, he talked about having some sort of conference like that.
Yeah. He told me that he's watching my Facebook page for what I put onto it.
All right.
No, I thought, oh God, I feel flattered.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, a conference like that, Knowledge Matters. Yeah, absolutely. That would be a good idea. I can.
I mean, NATO is fighting with, in a sense, the most important thing is the fictional construct that is the illusion that's first created before the war begins. And I always feel the first episode of Star Wars is called The Phantom Menace, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is the fictional, illusory enemy image that has to be mocked up first. Like before the Iraq War, you were given this fiendish picture of Saddam Hussein with weapons of mass destruction. So that illusion had to be first of all brewed up. Okay, and we had. I was talking about NATO. Well, that fought for 10 years in Afghanistan, and the pretext for that was that Osama bin Laden was somewhere in Afghanistan, and he had made 9/11 happen. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
And America could never give any evidence for that. It was just a story.
Yeah.
And somehow they got however many, God knows how many nations are in NATO, over 20 of them, to go and fight in Afghanistan for 10 years. Who were they fighting? Who were they fighting? Oh, the Taliban. That was their government, wasn't it?
The Taliban had destroyed the poppy harvest.
Yeah, they had destroyed all the poppy harvest, which America didn't want. They soon got that back again. So America, or then the whole of NATO going into Afghanistan, that was based on its fictional image of Osama bin Laden in the Torabon Mountains with a laptop causing 9/11 to happen. Okay, that outrageous fantasy, which is absolutely barking mad. You know.
Yeah.
And I often wonder how can all the nations, how can you get consensus of over 20 nations in Europe to send armies out to one of the poorest countries on earth and start fighting there based on a totally mad storyline like that? You know, how do they do it?
Emotionally, I think.
Emotionally, well, in a sense, none of us know. What's happening now? They're trying to get World War III going with NATO moving up closer and closer to Russia.
Yeah.
And you've got the story of, well, I would say the fictional story of the MH17 being shot down by a missile
by
Russia. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that didn't happen at all, and it was shot down by a couple of aeroplanes that were supplied by NATO or Kiev.
Yeah.
There was a NATO war game going on at the time. And whatever happened, I doubt if we'll ever know what happened. I think it's terribly important. The truth movement does try to focus on that question, but that is the pretext, the illusory phantasm pretext for for this apparent attempt to start World War III with NATO troops going right up to the border of Russia.
Yeah, like the Club of Rome cooked up a new enemy and that was the environment.
Oh, sorry, just a minute. Just got something. Hello? Yeah. Could you?
Nice hat.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Yes. You were saying.
I was saying, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the Club of Rome cooked
Right. Yeah.
another outward enemy, the environment, and they even mentioned that they cooked it up. I mean, they got it out of a hat, and so the environmental clubs have all been infiltrated, and they do all sorts of things under the guise that they're doing the right thing, but on the other hand, I'm not so sure that that is always true. And every club and every institution that purports to be doing something good often does the opposite, in my view. And if I read the paper, the mainstream papers, then I have to turn around everything that they say 180 degrees. Because, and when I watch television 5 minutes per day or something, but when I see parts of the news, I can't really look at it and listen to it because it's only propaganda. If you know a tiny bit more about the situation, it is.
I think a lot of people only watch RT, Russia Today. I think that's a bit more humane view of things.
Yes.
It doesn't seem quite so, quite so inhuman and controlled as our news is here. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, because the mainstream media basically are all in the hands of 5 owners, and I think these are all Jewish. So what do we expect? Do we expect truth from the mainstream media? I don't think.
I mean, let me give you, sorry, we rather wandered off the subject we were originally talking about, but perhaps that's okay. We're talking about what's happening in the modern world. I was looking at the shoot down of the MH17, right?
Yeah.
And there seemed to be a remarkable load of quite high-powered experts who believe that the plane shot down was the same plane that vanished in the Indian Ocean some months earlier.
Yeah.
Okay? That is pretty amazing. If you've got experts agreeing on it, it's exactly the same type of plane owned by MH, Malaysian Airlines, as Boeing 777, and is almost identical plane, not quite. And you've also got a lot of experts seem to believe that the bodies that hit the ground had been dead for a long time.
Yeah.
And got formaldehyde coming out of them, not real blood. And that is an extremely weird situation. And can we please talk about it? With all these, the state fabricated events we're getting in this 21st century, in recent years, you've always got the question, are these people really dead? Have you got real dead bodies? Did people who are really alive really die? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're aware, Desiree, that with the shoot down story of the MH17, a whole lot of passports were put onto the ground. Do you remember that? There are pictures of a whole cartload of passports, somebody just throwing them onto the ground.
Oh, okay.
The crash site of the MH17, you know.
Whoa. Strange.
This just looks totally bogus. You often get passports allegedly surviving. It's part of sort of daft storyline you're getting with these state fabricated.
Everybody has its own passport, and so how come they are in a bundle together?
Well, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. But a lot of these things don't make any sense. A lot of these bits of the storyline don't make sense at all. And they just know that the media won't question it. That they know that the media are sufficiently controlled that they can get away with it. So
I only remember that in the Netherlands, every time they had bits and pieces of the victims, then again, there were these black cars going the route to wherever it was, and there were people along the road mourning, and oh my
Yeah.
God, and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, it's tragic when you lose a loved one like that.
Yeah.
That's no doubt about it. But oh God, it was theater. That was what
Yeah.
false sentiment theater.
Are you absolutely sure in your mind that over 100 Dutch people really did die on that airplane?
I have no clue.
No.
I mean, people have come together. People that say that they lost a loved one.
How
But
come so, yeah.
I also saw a picture of the monument they have now for the MH17, and when
Yeah.
you look right on top of it, it's like the all-seeing eye. So what is with that?
That's strange, yeah.
It's interesting.
Well, this is something that I think there ought to be some. I would like to see some truth group in Amsterdam investigating it, because if it is the same plane that vanished over the Indian Ocean, then that has enormous implications. If Schiphol Airport, somehow the plane that took off there was that old MH370, that's got enormous implications. And it might help to stop World War III, because NATO advancing towards ever further east, ever closer to the borders of Russia, and more aggressive, drills and war gaming by the border of Russia, that is totally senseless.
Yeah.
And this might be the little thing that we could try and do to stop the process.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Well, there's a great idea. Yeah.
I don't know what sort of people you've got in Holland or Amsterdam, but I think that will be something worth trying to do, wouldn't it?
Well, I can think of one or two. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. Well, I can look into that also.
For example, I'll just give you an example. The pile of passports I just mentioned that were thrown down onto the ground, there were two names in them, two names given of kids with dates of birth.
These days in Holland, you have a passport for every child. That's in the old days, you could be in your mother's passport as a child, but these days, children need to have their own passport.
Right, okay.
So,
well, anyway, that would just be of interest if someone could ascertain, do those kids, did they really live? Are they real kids? And did they really die? Those are the two kind of key questions.
Yeah.
From birth certificates and stuff. I can't do that with I check out English.
Yeah, I understand.
Records, ancestry. But if there was anyone in Holland who wanted to do that, that would be a kind of useful start, because that was greatly used, that story associated with the Dutch Prime Minister, and it might be worth checking that out.
Yeah. I know that Lauren Murray also has spoken about the MH17.
Oh, has she? Oh, right. Yes,
I can ask her.
Do you know Lauren Murray?
Yeah. She has been several times in my show, and we are like sisters.
Oh, right. Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. She's got deep, very technical, expert knowledge about.
Absolutely, yes.
Load of very scary stuff about atomic science and radioactivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also about power grid.
Power grid, really?
Yeah. She puts Jesuits over the Jews and Uzbeks over the Jesuits.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm not so keen on her conspiracy stuff, but I think her she's got a lot of understanding of these matters. Yeah.
But cool. with the nuclear whistleblowing, she is very good. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm trying to do a new book about state fabricated terror events in Europe, and anything we could find out about the MH17 story, I think would be extremely valuable.
Yes.
There's got to be a development in that story. You know, whoever shot it down is one thing, and what was the plane that crashed? That just to get technical experts together at a real conference, really talking, and get them to meet together. I mean, there's so much you can do on the web, but I think if the Dutch government would allow a conference like that, I think that would be really something.
I don't know about the government allowing that. By the way, I found a YouTube film of a man who shows that a buck on a car, on a big lorry, passes through a street, and that is part of the MH17 investigation report. But then it's pointed out that the time frame of when that lorry with that buck on top is passing on.
Sorry, what is a buck on top? What is that?
Of a big lorry.
Yeah.
It's being hauled from one place to another.
All right, yeah.
They claim that is the buck that did it. And
all right, I'm with you. A BUK, let's just spell that out. A BUK missile.
Yeah.
Buck missile is claimed to have done it, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
The time frame of the film of the lorry moving through that street is absolutely wrong, because there is one shrub in bloom at the time.
Say that again. One shrub in bloom
at the wrong time. It is blooming in June, and they claim it's July.
Yeah, typical. Yeah, well, they do film these things at the wrong time.
Giveaway that the film has nothing to do with.
That's really good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I think this plane was several kilometers high. You see, it was above the clouds. I also heard that it was cloudy at the time when this thing was shot down. And there's no way some rebels could have got a missile and pointed it accurately so that it hit an overhead plane, which probably wasn't even visible. Probably it was cloudy at the time. And if they had fired a missile, people would have seen it. That the exhaust trajectory of a huge missile like that would have been seen, and nobody did. Nobody at all.
No.
So it's in every way not credible, and that the Dutch report is absolutely total rubbish.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the Dutch came out with a formal report. They called something like Eurojust, one of the absurd NATO acronyms for justice. You know, Eurojust, right?
Oh yeah, right.
And it had America in on the committee. Well, why they're not Europe? Well, why were they on it? And it didn't have Russia, right? Russia had loads of technical expert information about what happened.
Yeah.
Why wasn't Russia allowed on it? It was a totally absurd report that I don't think anybody believed in.
Malaysia allowed in?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think Malaysia was allowed in either.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, so that's also strange.
Yeah. I mean, Malaysia, to start with, it complained they weren't allowed to have the black boxes. You know, every plane has a black box.
Yeah.
So Malaysia complained, oh, can we please have the black box?
No, they couldn't.
And then for a day or so, they were given the black box. Great, we got the black box. And the next thing you hear, it's gone to the British Ministry of Defence, the black boxes. I think there are two of them, and the plane shot down. Oh, it's in the British Ministry of Defence. And then finally you hear a report from the British MOD about what the black box says. Well, I'm not sure if we believe that at all. You know, we want to hear the Malaysian experts talking about what their black box of their aeroplane says.
Yeah.
You know, we're really not believing a British MOD report. So the whole thing is just it's the wrong people, the wrong experts telling stuff about it.
Wasn't there also a question of Putin being in the same flight route approximately at the same time?
Yes, I think there was. Yeah, he just flown back from Brazil. He just signed this enormously important new bank thing. BRICS was setting up a new bank, you know.
So might it been
and he was flying back. And it was somewhere around that time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When he flew back.
What I heard, yeah.
And that was one of the stories, yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of these things that when it happens, you hear that and then never again.
Well, that's strange. I mean, it was on a totally forbidden flight path, you see.
Yeah.
The civilian planes were absolutely banned from flying over that war zone. There's no way they could have strayed over by mistake. So a lot of people feel that it couldn't have had real passengers in it. There's no way a real normal pilot with real passengers would have strayed over that war zone.
No.
And it wasn't given permission to fly as high as it wanted to. Had to fly a bit lower to be in range of those two jets that shot it down.
Yeah.
So it is at the moment a mystery, and I think if there were some of the Dutch truth group, there is a lot that they could find out, you know. And also it's a very thrilling international story. If you've got the plane that vanished in the middle of nowhere in the Indian Ocean, there was a story of the bodies looking oriental. That was one thing that we heard, that the bodies found when the plane was shot down looked oriental. Okay, somebody said that. So before everyone forgets about it, I think if it could be allowed to have a symposium on that, that might be one angle that would get publicity, you know.
Yeah. But I think we should be just going ahead with a symposium about it and not let it depend on any government, because they will...
Well, not the government, no. But there are top aviation experts that I've seen that do express this view.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a technical issue, which plane is which.
Well, we have technical experts in our own ranks. Yeah.
Well, there was that chap, Willem, who organised the conference.
Yeah, he has been a pilot. Yeah, he
Willem
used
Kronhoff, yes.
Yeah. And there is someone else I'm thinking about having to do with airplanes. So, yeah. So, yeah, we can set something up, I think.
Yes. Well, let's bear that in mind, Desiree.
Yes, let's do that. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, yes. Well, I think we've gone over some very deep subjects today, and I hope we got somewhere.
Yeah. Well, we had an intelligent conversation. That's what I call it. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I hope to meet you again, and perhaps I don't know. In Amsterdam, there's quite a sale for English language books, isn't there?
Yeah.
They sell quite well, don't they? So I could come and promote my book.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I've got this little one, quite recent. I'll just show my recent one.
How Britain initiated both world wars.
Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah.
That's a small, easy to read little book, and it's actually just a talk I gave.
Oh yeah.
A 2-hour talk, and it's only about 70 pages, this book. So you can get that on Amazon, and that definitely covers what we've been talking about today. I feel there's a lot to be said for comparing both world wars. There's so much in common, with Britain starting both of them and Germany not wanting either of them and doing what it could to try and avoid them.
Yes.
So that's what I'm sort of trying to do this year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all another thing that people never hear, that Germany tried to not go to war very actively. They tried to stop all that. And
yeah, they did. Yeah, before the First World War, they hadn't been to war for about 50 years. You know, they were quite a pacific nation. And they were strong and mighty, but they used that strength to resolve conflicts and prevent war. But it just became, with British plotting and conspiring of the various nations around Germany, it just became too unstable, They managed to get Germany into the war. Yeah.
And basically what happened when Hitler went into Poland to rescue the originally German group that was living there, because they were put into Poland after World War One, but they were being harassed and threatened.
Yeah.
The same thing happened at the Krim with Russia, at the Ukraine, at the Krim now.
Yeah.
It was the same tactic.
Yeah, I suppose it was. That's a good point. What happened with Poland, first of all, Poland just grabbed that land in 1919, right, after the First World War was over, when Germany was prostrate. Poland just grabbed it. Then the Treaty of Versailles said, well, okay, Poland, you can keep that land you just grabbed on condition that you treat the 2 million Germans with respect that are in that land.
Mm-hmm.
And they manifestly did not. That there was mass murder, rape, and going on, and about 1 million or so Germans have fled into the woods. It's very hard to get accounts of this, but in the months leading up to World War II, that was definitely going on.
Yeah.
And you might take the view that it was people who wanted to start the war that made it happen, right? Poland was totally truculent. Poland wanted war with Germany. It kept declaring that it wanted war with Germany. It believed that it could beat Germany. Nobody quite realised what Germany was like. Poland seemed to think it could beat it, and it had a larger army than Germany. So Poland was totally truculent, and it then mobilised its army, which is equivalent to declaration of war. So what Germany did was simply go in up to the boundary of what had previously been Germany.
Yeah.
And I would say that was a totally legitimate act, because the condition at the Treaty of Versailles had not been fulfilled, that Poland was treating the resident Germans with respect, and therefore they did not have a right to occupy that land. So I wouldn't be in a hurry to describe that as a German invasion.
But they did, because they turned around everything in a way that was negative for Germany.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. So, but and also the other thing that which I go over in this book, I go over the sequence of what happened. I can't see that Germany had any other option. That Germany couldn't just do nothing. You couldn't have these appalling atrocities going on, with Germany's being tortured and castrated and so on, and terrorized. You couldn't have that going on a massive scale on your borders, and repeated invasions of the border between Poland and Germany. You couldn't have that going on and just do nothing. There wasn't an option.
No, that's inhuman. Yeah.
And what really made the Poles, brought out the worst behaviour in the Poles, was the British war guarantee. A year before the war started, Chamberlain gave this unconditional war guarantee to Poland that in any conflict with Germany, Britain would support Poland. Okay? And that was amounted to war guarantee, even if Poland started the war. Even in case of Poland approaching aggression, they felt they had British guarantee, a backup. They didn't realise how totally worthless the guarantee was. Okay? There was absolutely nothing that Britain could or intended to do in the event. So it was a totally worthless guarantee. But that war guarantee made it impossible for Germany to negotiate with Poland at all. Poland would not, would not agree to anything.
No. They felt strong, even if it was bogus. Yeah.
Yeah, they felt strong. Germany was not, a lot of people don't realise Germany was not in any way intending that conflict with Poland to take place. In 1934, Germany made a non-aggression pact with Poland, lasting for 10 years, which to guarantee of mutual security. So it obviously wanted peace and goodwill with Poland. And in 1938, they just wrote to Poland asking, can we please just have the railway line and the road connecting Danzig, the port of Danzig, with the motherland of Germany?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what they did. And Poland didn't even bother to reply.
Oh, yeah.
So Poland was kind of wanting the war and sort of gearing itself up for the war. That was my impression, I would say. And if Britain had actually wanted to avoid the war, there's loads of things it could have done by way of leaning on Poland to negotiate reasonably.
Well, isn't that the same situation that Putin has now? He is trying to avoid war, but they are creeping up on him with all sorts of...
Yeah, it looks just the same to me. Yeah. I think we've got the phone again. Hang on. Hello?
Busy man.
Got
Okay, well, we are at the end of our 2 hours.
right,
So
yeah.
is there something, Nick, that you absolutely want to say before we end?
I think that's a lot. I think that was a full and frank discussion, Desiree. Yeah, full and frank discussion. Yeah. Okay, well, I look forward to another chat later on, Desiree.
Yes, me too. And come to Holland again. We can organize something.
Oh, I'd love to, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, well, bye for now then.
I'll talk with John about that and with Willem, and
yeah,
we get going.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Suggestion.
Yeah, okay. All the best to you then.
Thank you very much, Nick Kollerstrom. And thank you, listeners, for your attention and your time. And till the next Kaleidoscope, that's my other program. Till the next Minority of One report. Bye-bye.
Conscious Consumer Network was designed to create a live broadcast TV network for free and independent media and has been live on the air since the 1st of January 2015. CCN gets millions of minutes watched every month and is viewed in over 140 countries, having produced around 1,400 shows and counting.
And you know, it's very hard to get on the mainstream media, of course, the corporate media that's getting tighter and more monopolized and more restrictive for any outside information.
The live broadcasts are free to view and all shows are archived in high definition on YouTube. CCN plays host to a stellar team of broadcasters and producers, all of whom rely on the network to get their message and information out to the world. CCN has continued to evolve, constantly seeking to create greater media usage and opportunities for both broadcasters and viewers, including supporting projects such as the newly launched consciouscommunities.org, a brand new social media platform that is free to use and has been created for those dedicated to the pursuit of freedom, justice, peace, and sustainability to come together and co-create the solutions to a better world. Due to the constant heavy usage, we are in need of replenishing and replacing of key hardware and infrastructural wear and tear. This includes the fixing and replacing of parts of the live broadcast equipment system, as well as increasing storage capacities for content and projects. Without this, CCN and its affiliate projects will simply not be able to continue. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded project, and it is up to you all to keep CCN on the air. Support our funding drive with a donation or become a monthly pledger. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.